You ever have one of those mornings where just know something's about to go sideways, but you can't quite put your finger on it? That was me the day my entire life got flipped upside down, starting with the smell of grass and lake water, and ending with a HOA president screaming for help as sewage oozed through her marble floors. I wish I was making this up, but stick around because the revenge in this story gets wild. Picture this, the sun rising over Lake Serenity painting the water gold while I sit in Dad's old wooden chair, the one he built back before cancer took him. It's not just a spot to fish for me, it's home, it's memories. It's where life made sense when the outside world didn't. But that peace got shattered fast like glass under a hammer when I heard the unmistakable clack of designer heels crunching up my gravel drive. Brenda Sullivan, queen of the HOA, was on the warpath, flanked by her silent board lackeys and a little fan club of neighbors whispering like high schoolers at prom. "Mr. Harper, we need to discuss your situation," she said, her voice sharp as her French tip's eyes flicking to the lake like it was radioactive. Brenda, with her perfect hair and memories of losing a beach house once, was convinced my lake was going to flood the neighborhood, and she had the HOA behind her. "The board has voted. This water hazard must be drained within 30 days. She made it sound official, slapping a $500 fine on my tackle box like she was laying down the law of the land. Susan Miller chimed in from the peanut gallery about how my lake was a disaster waiting to happen, her little group nodding like bobbleheads. I tried to argue 40 years, no floods, not a single problem. But Brenda's smile was all shark and no warmth. Decision is final. Now, it's one thing to deal with ridiculous rules, but watching Brenda run roughshod over decent people was another. My neighbor Sophie, a banker who'd lost her mom the year before, sidled over and whispered how Brenda fined her for a tree that had been there longer than the HOA itself. There was this silent resentment bubbling in the neighborhood, but nobody dared challenge Brenda directly, not even poor Mr. Douglas, still smarting from being humiliated over the color of his mailbox. That night, fueled by anger, I tore through Dad's old boxes of HOA records in the garage, the bulb-blown flashlight between my teeth. I found something, an old rulebook from the pre-Brenda days that talked about mandatory pipe inspections. I knew for a fact they hadn't been done. The reason simple. Brenda had been funneling those funds to herself, skipping maintenance to save money for, well, whatever it was she was really hiding. I just started putting the pieces together when I heard engines outside, heavy machinery, unmarked trucks. Brenda wasn't waiting 30 days. By the time I reached the lake, they'd already drained a third of it, dead fish, floating mud everywhere. The stench, indescribable. They worked all night, faces turned away, the job as dirty as the water they left behind. Nate Carter, my oldest friend and the local plumber with a fondness for mischief, showed up the next day, surveying the damage with a grim set to his jaw. "This means war," he declared, and with him on my side, I knew we had a fighting chance. Nate had installed Brenda's sprinklers last year, knew every valve and timer, every weak point. Time for a little poetic justice, he grinned. That night, under the glow of a penlight, we reprogrammed her system to overwater her manicured lawn. By dawn, Brenda's designer heels were sinking in a swamp. Her rose bushes drowning, and the best part, it looked like an accident. Old pipes, calcium buildup, whatever. The neighbors gathered some hiding smirks as Brenda shrieked and pointed a muddy finger at me, accusing me of sabotage. "Looks like you've got a plumbing problem," I said, fighting a smile. "Maybe you should have kept up with those pipe inspections." Even Susan's loyalists were starting to question the narrative as Brenda screamed at the landscapers. But Brenda wasn't about to back down. She blasted the entire neighborhood with an email painting me as a criminal, attaching photos of her ruined yard, her lawyer's threats ringing in everyone's inboxes before breakfast. Suddenly, people I'd known for years were crossing the street to avoid me, whispering behind my back, the isolation almost worse than the fines, now up to $2,000 and counting. That's when Sophie knocked on my door, eyes wary, arms full of documents. She'd found proof of Brenda's embezzlement, fake pool maintenance for a pool that didn't exist, payments to companies that were nothing more than shell games. And then I found my own proof, hidden in a waterproof box Dad had stashed by the dock, the original permits, environmental reports, and evidence that my lake had always been a flood prevention measure, not a risk. Mr. Douglas, ever the quiet soldier, let me in on his own stack of records. "She's been fleecing us for years," he said, voice tight with old anger. The next HOA meeting was a disaster for Brenda. I invoked the rule about mandatory pipe inspections, caught her off guard, and when the city inspector rolled in, things unraveled fast. Turns out 5 years of skipped maintenance is a recipe for disaster. Sewage, backup toilets, erupting basements, flooded lawns, ruined. Brenda's palace became a swamp overnight, the stench driving even her die-hard supporters to the brink. Desperate Brenda started burning evidence in the HOA parking lot at night, feeding documents to a trash can fire. I caught it all on camera, including a fake repair form backdated and signed with a notary stamp from someone who'd lost their license years ago. Her downfall was inevitable but messy. She tried suing me, claiming my meddling had destroyed the neighborhood, but in court the truth poured out like sewage from a busted pipe. My lawyer, sharp as a tack and fueled by her own vendetta against corrupt HOAs, dismantled Brenda's case piece by piece. The bombshell was my recording of Brenda bragging about draining the lake and pocketing the money, her own voice sealing her fate. Sophie laid out the paper trail, red lines and all, and even Karen Tate, Brenda's former right hand, stood up and admitted Brenda had asked her to sign blank forms for fake paperwork. It was no longer Brenda versus me. It was Brenda versus everyone she'd ever hurt. The judge didn't just dismiss her lawsuit. He leveled criminal charges, ordered the HOA dissolve the board, replaced and Brenda to pay for restoring the lake plus damages. The handcuffs clicked shut, and her kingdom crumbled in a single afternoon. But you want to know what real satisfaction looks like? Watching Brenda's house turn into a swamp after she tried one last time out on bail to sabotage the restoration. Only this time, Nate and I made sure the entire network of supporters who'd enabled her got a taste of their own medicine yards, flooded fancy irrigation systems, misfiring gardens turning into bogs. I uploaded the footage online and it went viral, Brenda's swamp legacy, complete with her standing in 3 feet of muck designer robe and all screaming at a neighborhood that wanted nothing more to do with her. In the end, neighbors who'd avoided me came around the HOA, finally became something good, and Lake Serenity filled back up cleaner and brighter than ever. We'd turned the tide together, and sitting there at sunset with Sophie and Nate, I finally felt the peace I'd fought so hard to protect. Of course, just as things settled, a letter from the new interim HOA president arrived, Brenda's old lawyer buddy, naturally hinting at new rules and more battles ahead. So, what do you think? Was I right to fight back the way I did, or did it all go too far? Let me know where you stand and if you've ever tangled with a neighborhood tyrant. Because as I learned, justice in the swamp can get messy, but sometimes that's exactly what it takes.